So good afternoon, everyone. Happy Independence Day for people from India. Today we are here to talk about organ donation. This week was Organ Donation Day, and as part of our effort to improve the quality of life of patients with chronic conditions, we are running the series of awareness programs to make people aware about the need for organ donation, as well as address any concerns that you may have. Um, Quick introduction, and we are very happy that Mohan Foundation is supporting us through this four-part series. Patients Engage is an online platform operational for about 5 years, and we are focused on evidence-based and holistic management of chronic conditions, specifically from the perspective of patients and family caregivers. We believe in the value of lived experiences and how, if you're informed and engaged with your own health, you are likely to make better decisions and be proactive in your health management, leading to better quality of life. So as I said, we are doing these series on organ donation awareness, and today we are very pleased to have with us a panel which is a very wide-ranging panel. We have with us Kalpesh Palan, who's a donor family member who donated his father's organs, and we're very pleased to have him with us. We have Dr. Astrid Lobo Gajiwala, who's the director, Auto Soto Western region in Maharashtra, which is under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. We have Dr. Anvay Mule, who's Director Heart Transplantation and Advanced Cardiac Surgery at HN Reliance Hospital, Mumbai. And we have Jaya Jairam, who is Project Manager at Mohan Foundation started the Bombay office and is herself a kidney transplant recipient. So a quick reminder to our attendees, both on Facebook as well as on Zoom. This discussion here is, not to be taken as specific medical advice. So if you have a medical question, please do consult your doctor specifically. This session is being recorded, and I better check that it is being recorded. Yeah. And if you're logged into Zoom, please post your questions on the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll ask them on your behalf. And if you're on Facebook, you can post them on the live feed. And as always, you can follow us on our various channels and check out our website, patientsengage.com. And you can always write to us at editor@patientsengage.com. So let me stop sharing and let's start the discussion, because we have a lot of ground to cover today with our panel. And Dr. Mule, I'd just like to start very quickly with you on the first question is, we are so used to hearing in India about living donors for kidney, living donors for liver. Why is there a need for diseased organ donation?
First of all, good afternoon to everybody, and for Indians, a happy Independence Day. Thank you for asking me to join this webinar. Organ donation is very close to my heart, and the heart is one organ in which you can't ask a live person to give his heart. So I can request my relative or my loved one to donate one of his kidney, half of his liver, or some part of his skin. But eye or cornea or a heart is something which the live person will not able to give it to the person, and then it comes a cadaver. And the deceased organ is there are plenty of around, but the problem is that the decision is not taken by the patient himself because he is deceased, and it has been taken by the relatives, and the relatives at the moment it is very not clear, because you will realize that when it happens, the brain death happens to somebody, it happens so fast, so quick, without any previous history or anything. And then to take that decision is very, very tough and difficult for the relatives, and then it is important. So the importance of the deceased is so much that not only the heart, but he can donate almost 8 organs and help almost 8 to 9 people around who require that, and by which he will get an excellent quantity and quality of life in future. Not only that, I go beyond that and say that this is the way that you can keep the loved one. When your neurologist comes and tells you that this has happened to you, then you can keep your loved one alive in the form of heart or kidney or eye. Your loved one can see through his own eyes through someone, and that you can keep it alive. In live donors, it is not possible. And my one request to all is that if live person can give one of his kidney or half of his liver, then why not deceased one who does not need them at all after the death?
Right. And we'll come to Dr. Lobo, but one more question to you, Dr. Muley, is, you mentioned brain death. Can you explain what is brain death?
Yes, we die only once. It's very important to understand. We die only once, and we are born also only once. And the moment I am born, I declare myself I am alive, is when I take my first breath or when I cry. Mm. Right? Similarly, whatever the cause, whatever the reason of my death may be, if that is my last breath and I can no more take any breath, my breathing is totally stopped, I am dead. This can happen by two ways, either when my heart stops functioning or my brain stops functioning. But when the brain stops functioning all over the world, what the scientists have realized and understood is that once the center of the breathing or respiration in our brain is damaged by water clot, maybe bleeding, maybe hemorrhage, maybe tumor, maybe trauma, maybe whatever the reasons, it may be a road traffic accident, any reason, that damage is done and I'm no more breathing, then after a few days, my heart will also stop functioning automatically.
Right.
Because, and then whatever care you take, whatever best precautions you do, whatever the best available treatment you give on this planet Earth, the heart will stop functioning in 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Right? And why not then use, those that person is dead, already dead. We are keeping him artificially alive on a ventilator. And that is what the brain death is, that when the scientists or doctors realize it, neurologists or intensivists, they realize it, then they stop the ventilator, observe the patient for at least 10 minutes that they are no more breathing. And that is what we call apnea test. And then they show it to the relatives, and then the call is done whether we can donate the organs in them.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So Dr. Lobo, if you can just quickly introduce yourself, as well as, why do we need in India an organ donation drive? We have so many people dying every day in this country. Why do we still need an organ donation drive? Sorry, you're on mute, Doctor.
Sorry. So thank you, Aparna. First of all, good afternoon to all the participants, and thank you so much to Engage India for including me in this webinar. Nice way to celebrate Independence Day. Thank you. So coming to your question, I think it's common knowledge that the demand for life-saving organs is far in excess of the availability for organs. I think anybody who takes even a cursory look on the internet can see that. So what has happened now is from 2017, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has started state organ and tissue transplant organizations. And the good thing about this is that with these SOTOs, as they are called, we now have some definite data, because one of the functions of the SOTOs is to maintain registries. So just to give you an idea, the Western region comes under me, but I will give you an idea of some of the figures of 2019. If I could just have those two slides, please. Yes, so this is in the case of Maharashtra. So as you can see, in 2019, we had 160 deceased donors and 456 patients benefited from this. So these would be patients who need a kidney, liver, lung, heart, pancreas, small bowel. Okay, all of these are included in this 456. Now, in this same period, so you can see 2019, this was the total amount, but by the end of the year, okay, that's so basically the 1st of January 2020, we still had 6,751 patients on the waiting list. And the majority of these, of course, are for kidney 5616 and for liver 1006. And in that same month, in January, we added 100 patients for the kidney waiting list, 91 patients for the liver waiting list. So you can see the numbers escalating, and there is no way that the recipients are catching up with these numbers. I would also give you the figures for Gujarat. If I can have the next slide, please. So Gujarat is another state in the western region which has a fairly good organ transplant program. And here also you can see, although the numbers are less than Maharashtra, you can see once again deceased donors in 2019, 63, recipients 161. And by the end of 2019, they still had 974 patients on the waiting list. So yes, we definitely need an organ donation drive.
So what role does Soto Roto play in improving these numbers?
So we actually look at two aspects. Okay, one is to increase public awareness so that it becomes easier to give consent at the time of death. Dr. Mule has already explained what a traumatic experience that is, and it's not easy to do that. So that is the first aspect. And the second aspect is we look at the whole donation system, and so we look at training people to create this robust donation system. So for instance, so just to give you some examples, in Maharashtra, we have the Roto Soto has about 20 NGOs who are working with us. Mohan Foundation is one of them. And we network with these NGOs. The NGOs have their own public awareness programs. Plus, we also, collaborate with them. We also, so there are various things that are done. There are rallies, there are, things like the Ganpati festival, which is just around the corner. Unfortunately, this year we're going to lose out on that opportunity. But, we have stalls for creating awareness. We go to educational institutions. We've had some NGOs where one had a biker who went across the country on a bike. Promoting organ donation. We've had padiyatras. So there are all kinds of things. Now, in addition to the NGOs, we also have in Maharashtra, we have 4 zonal transplant coordination centers, and each of these conduct their own awareness programs. So in 2018, for instance, you had the Rotary International District in Pune that worked with the Pune ZTCC, and they actually set a Guinness World Record by obtaining 24,446 pledges on a single day. I mean, that was absolutely amazing.
Right.
Okay. So those are with regard to public awareness. With regard to training, many people don't realize that there are many stakeholders involved. Okay, and it's important for all these people to be trained.
Right.
So recently, earlier this year, we had the first Roto Soto organized the first cadaver organ retrieval workshop. Okay, in collaboration with the KEM Hospital at Parel in Mumbai. And we had surgeons who were trained on how to retrieve organs, because this is so important to the outcome of the transplant surgery. We have training programs for transplant coordinators who are key figures with the whole consent process. We have training programs for police who are involved with the medico-legal aspects. So, like I said, there are many stakeholders, and we try to train all of them. Intensivists, extremely important, because it's in the ICU that a brainstem donor, a potential donor, is identified. That donor has to be maintained, okay? And then, of course, the whole process of brainstem death certification. So all of these are training programs. They're done by experts. The Roto Soto has various teams of experts. Dr. Mule is on our heart committee. So, and these are the people who conduct a lot of these training programs.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Lobo. I think I'd like to bring in Kalpesh, you at this point, right? If you can just talk us through what happened, and you donated your father's organs, but what led to that situation, and how did you handle that?
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Independence Day to all. This actually just on the in 2014 on the 23rd of December, like we were caught unawares because our father my father, sorry, started vomiting all of a sudden in the
Mm.
afternoon and was admitted to the hospital immediately. Uh, he was then put on a ventilator on admission since his condition was deteriorating. And within 8 hours after the scan, it was concluded that he had brain hemorrhage and his condition was very critical, and an operation was also not an option.
Mm.
Uh, Now, as we just discussed before this thing that I'm myself a Rotarian, and in that very year, in 2014, we had a seminar with Mohan Foundation. One of the representatives had come across and narrated the importance of organ donation, and all of us did register for the noble cause. So once this was through, I mean, once we came to know my father was very critical, and it was very difficult situation. So what happened next is that I told my brother that if it was fine that we donate his organs, and
Mm.
my brother is MD doc himself, so he said yes. The thought is fine, but let us confirm with the doctors whether everything is possible, because there are many medical things to be confirmed initially.
Right.
So post once that happened, I think everything was fine. The doctor said yes, so my brother instantly agreed, and after that we had a discussion with my sister and my mother as well, who are absolutely fine with the cause, because we knew, as I mean Dr. Mole also said right now a few minutes back, that once you are dead, I mean you are not going to take away anything, and there is nothing as such. So then we were happy, I mean we were fine with the donation part, and it was the eyes, the liver and the kidneys which were donated.
Mm.
Very privileged to say that there were 5 recipients of that,
Right.
and even his heart was in a very perfect condition, and we were looking forward for a heart transfer as well. But
Mm.
it seems in 2014, I mean, I had a talk with my brother yesterday as well. I said, what had happened exactly? So he
Mm.
said, no, he said at that time, it seems the doctors said that it was not possible for a transplant or something. And I'm not really sure about that why, but his heart was in perfect working condition. He was brain dead, as what doctor said. So and the one thing I still I'm really I could have done more was donate his skin.
Mm.
But in that moment, we were not aware that that was also a thing which would have helped another maybe 3 or 4 or maybe 5. I don't know how many of them.
Right.
So
Right.
this is how the events had folded on. I think in a matter of around 8 to 16 hours, you can say the matter had all the events folded. I mean, and the unfortunate thing was he was in a very healthy condition.
Mm.
So it was really a shock for us. Uh, but as I said, yes, we are all a bit. My sister is a doc, my wife is a doc, my brother is a doc.
Right.
So with all that, it was not much of a concern to convince my mother as well,
Mm.
and we got through with the process, ma'am.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Mulle, you wanted to say something.
I think just 2 points I want to say here is it was these are the heroes
Correct.
the song we heard from Kalpesh and this family that we really salute about their acts, what they have
Correct.
done
Thank you, sir.
to the humanity, and it is absolutely very nice thing they have done. The secondly, that time the heart transplant was not in happening in this part of the world at
Right,
least,
sir.
and that was the reason why there was no much taken. But Mumbai is a very vibrant city, you see, and the once the first heart transplant in Mumbai has happened, the ZTCC, then Soto, then Roto, then Noto, it has spread so fast, they are coming up so fast. It is
Mm.
infectious more than Corona, I believe. It happened that spread, and it's for good. It is good. I'm happy for it. That awareness is spreading so fast. The secondly, what Dr. Lobo mentioned is about Gujarat, and it is absolutely a phenomenal model. And Donate Life there is working extremely hard. And I must mention here for all Indians that the Surat Donate Life is generating so many donors, organ donors, cadaveric organ donors. That is, I think, the capital of organ donation of our country. Next to the diamond, it has organ donation. And in Gujarat, whatever the robust liver and kidney transplant is happening is because of these donations. And most importantly, the liver and kidney transplant which has happened in Ahmedabad, Aparna,
Yeah.
more than live donors. Gujarat is the only state where this transplant has happened from cadaver deceased donors than from live donors.
Oh,
And
that's amazing. Yeah.
very proud to say that.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. Thank you. Thank you for that information. Jaya, I think let me bring you in. I guess it's a difficult, like Kalpesh said, that there were a few hours where they were waiting to see what was happening with their father. And in this case, luckily they had thought through it. But how do you handle, as an NGO, how in this space, how do you support hospitals to have these conversations with donor families?
Sure. Thanks, Aparna, for having me here. Thanks, Patients Engage. Essentially at Mohan Foundation in Maharashtra, we're working with a couple of the government hospitals. So, the situation is a little bit more difficult. And the families that we deal with, they are invariably not aware so much about organ donation per se. Obviously, brain death is a very foreign concept to them. So the first time that they are hearing about brain death and organ donation is probably, from the mouth of the transplant coordinators or the teams or within the government hospitals. So not an easy situation, and I cannot generalize it. Every case is different. Every family is different. It has a different set of challenges that come up. And I'm happy to share with you that whatever donations are happening in the government hospitals is because of the initiative and the positive outlook of the state government to ensure that organ donation must grow, organ donation rates must grow. And so right from the deans to all the teams out there, they're very positive about this. And even though, they're very hard pressed for resources, it's not easy. So in a private setup, donor maintenance becomes a no-brainer, but in a government setup, donor maintenance is a huge challenge. And,
right.
So yeah, so there are different set of challenges in every, with every case. But the point is that everybody's heart is in the right place. Everyone wants it to happen. And that is how it happens. And approaching the donor family, explaining the entire process, you have to start right from ABC with them. And it takes time at times. They also have different set of issues. They expect a certain level of response from the teams, but if they've had any bad experiences during the treatment of the patient, then later that ask becomes even more difficult. But the system is fairly overworked in the government hospitals. So special care, special attention is always a huge challenge,
Right.
Yeah, but I'm happy to share with you that the heart is in the right place. Overall, the team sort of immediately work together and they ensure that happens.
Right. Another question that we've received from people that, I've pledged, I've signed up and got my donor card. So couple of questions. One, do I have to carry it around with me all the time? And is it enough that I have just, got this?
Okay, so let me share with you that the donor card per se is not a legal document. It's not that once you've taken the pledge, then automatically it is put to use. No. The idea behind the donor card, so donor card is basically where one is expressing his or her wish. It's like a living will, where you're saying that, hey, after I'm no more, this is how I want my organs, my body to be treated. And this is essentially a message to the loved ones, to the family members. This is essentially to for them to keep in mind, bear in mind, so that when the person is no more, uh, uh, when I'm no more, there's no way that I can express it. So if I sign up for the donor card and I don't really share it with anyone, no one gets to know this, right?
Right.
So essentially, it's the family members who need to give the consent. And therefore, it becomes very important to show the donor card to your loved one, to tell them, I've signed up for this. This is how I want my organs to be treated. And carrying it in in your wallet, in your purse always is important, because you are also mentioning your emergency contact over there. So the donor card sort of double up as an emergency contact card.
Right.
God forbid, if something were to happen, at least the family members can be reached. And it is also a sort of a way to complete the loop, where there is a contact number, like the Mohan Foundation donor card carries the toll-free number, and which works 24/7 in 8 languages. So this National Organ Donation Helpline sort of completes the loop, and it enables the family to reach out to somebody who can counsel, who can guide, who can give confidence to the family members about how to go about this. Because invariably, once the discussion has taken place at home, we see family members coming forth by themselves.
Right.
You will be surprised to know that we even get calls on the helpline from smaller hospitals which are not equipped to carry out organ donation, but the family member has become brain dead, and the the families want to then reach out and they say, we do know something about brain death, we've heard about this, डॉक्टर्स कह रहे हैं कि ये ब्रेन डेड है, अब हमको आगे क्या कैसे करना है कुछ पता नहीं है, आप प्लीज गाइड करिए. So we had such situations, which is amazing, and that's only possible through awareness, and the call to action is sort of complete. That's why the donor card becomes very important.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think you're on mute, Dr. Lob. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I agree totally with everything that Jaya has said, and I just wanted to add something.
Sure.
That, what we have to realize is that when people are asked, when family members are asked about consent, it's an extremely traumatic experience. I think Kalpesh has already said that he had, they had a little problems convincing their mother. And so, when you have the pledge card, this process has already happened in advance. So it makes it much easier for the family, to say, okay, our loved one who died would have liked this. So let's do what this person wants. So I think that's something important to realize. And in fact, there has been a study which shows that when something like this is done, when there's a card and a discussion happening before, we get 98% of people saying, yes to a donation, as opposed to only 96%, as opposed to only 58% where this discussion has not happened. And the other thing is, I think most cards also require that a relative sign the card. So that that at least one person is aware of the kind of decision that you've made.
Right. So question that comes up, and this is to you, Dr. Lobo, is, patients sometimes worry that, if I have a donor card, hospitals will not make an effort to save my life. So how is a patient's interest safeguarded? You're unmuted.
I will start answering that, but maybe Dr. Muley can then
Yes, we will also bring in Dr. Muley on that.
So, I think it's very important for people to realize that the whole process of certifying brainstem death is a very serious process, and it's a process that has been very clearly defined in the law. So not anybody can declare a patient brainstem death. There is a team of 4 doctors. This is mandated by the law. There is a team of 4 doctors. One of whom includes the treating doctor, one of whom is the doctor who is in charge of the hospital where the donation is likely to occur. And there are 2 other people, either a neurophysician or a neurosurgeon plus another specialist. And both of these people have to actually be registered with the state. It's not that any neurosurgeon can, certify brainstem death. These people have to be certified. They're on a list of the Directorate of Health Services, and they are registered by the hospital and the DHS. And only this team can actually certify brainstem death. And again, there's a specific procedure. Dr. Bule has already described it. There's 2 sets of tests which are done 6 hours apart in the case of adults, 12 hours apart in the case of children. So this is a serious matter. It's not just, you just declare somebody brainstem, or an individual declares somebody brainstem death.
Right, right. Thanks.
Yes,
Dr. Mule, would you like to come in as well?
Madam has explained it very nicely and very clearly. Just a couple of things I want to say is that the apnea test is done 6 hours apart, and that is to confirm it that this person is totally dead. The secondly, it is very, very important that the intensivist and all the team keeps these donors in a very good condition, and that takes a lot of efforts to keep him, his heart, his kidney, his liver, his lungs alive. It takes a lot of medications, a lot of treatment, a lot of efforts to do that. Suppose the patient says that, no, I don't want to give any organ, I do not want to give any organ, all these efforts are not required. Please understand. It is, if somebody feels, if the society what feels is that oh, this is branded, so हमको मार दिया है, तो अभी वो सब बंद कर दिया, तो हमको मारा दिया है क्योंकि उनको organ चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं है. Please understand this, that we need to take a lot of efforts, lot of medications to keep them in a good condition and keep them alive. That is very important.
Right.
And just to add, if I may add to this, it's difficult for the family to understand that, because for them, when they watch their loved one on the ventilator, it appears as if the person is still breathing. It appears as, the chest is going up and down, the relative is still breathing. So it's all the more difficult for them to really accept brain death unless they have prior knowledge of it, or they have, just like in Mr. Kalpesh Palan's case, they had immediate loved ones who are educated about this, who are doctors and who have knowledge about this. So that sort of makes it easier. But otherwise, for a family who knows nothing about it, it's very difficult to accept it.
Right. Thank you. The other question that keeps coming up, because there's a lot of confusion, right? Because you can pledge yourself, get a donor card from various NGOs, local NGOs, Rotary, Lion, state level, Mohan Foundation, etc. How does it all come together? If I'm not carrying my donor card, is there still a central repository? Does all of this information go on to the Noto site, or is there that process already in place? How does that work? And is there a difference between getting a donor card from a local NGO versus kind of registering on a Roto Soto site? Dr. Lobo, do you want to? Okay, sorry.
Okay. So just to say that, in actual fact, I think as Jaya has already explained, the purpose of the pledge card is really to create awareness. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where the site is. Okay, the important thing is, have you had the discussion with your family? That's the first thing I want to say.
Right.
Having said that, I would also say that just creating a registry of pledge forms is good, but it doesn't serve a practical purpose. The practical purpose comes in, like Jaya said, it's good to have a local organization. So the local SOTO, a local NGO, the reason being, if the family requires help, so okay, the family knows that their loved one would like to, donate. Maybe they need to ask some questions, maybe they need help in some way, then it's good to contact a local organization. However, I must also say that all transplant hospitals, hospitals which are, retrieving organs and which are transplanting, they all have their transplant coordinators, because that is absolutely mandatory by the government. You can only get registered if you have a transplant coordinator. So most transplant hospitals are equipped to handle the whole process, to handle questions. So personally, I feel even if you're not carrying your donor card, Okay, what's more important is does your family know?
Right.
That's
Right.
ultimately that's the bottom line.
Yes, Dr. Mule.
I just want to add to that is that there are two types of systems, opt out and opt in. And you have an opt in system that I want to be in a system of donating my organs.
Right.
And that consent has to be taken.
Correct.
While opt-out system, which is there in some countries, and why I'm bringing out is that there was some news few days back by Mr. Varun Gandhi, who is trying to put in assembly to pass the law about opt-out system in our country.
Right. Right.
In those cases, it is very important that you carry a card with you. For example, if you are in America or in Australia, and you have your driving license on which it is taken, on which it is written, you are an organ donor or you are not an organ donor.
Yeah.
So as soon as, suppose for example, I am in Australia and if I get a road traffic accident and I'm gone to somebody has taken me to the hospital and my wallet is taken and my driving license is seen, which is put in a computer, it is a nationwide alert that there is one organ donor.
Right.
So
Right.
that system is not yet here in India.
Right.
That is what Lobo madam said, that it is importantly to carry that card is to make the awareness in the society and to our near ones. In
Right.
opt-out system, when I'm 18 year old, when I go for my driving license, I have to declare that I do not wish to donate my organs. I am opting out of this system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in that case, my name comes on a national newspaper and on a national channels that I am not an organ donor. So if in future, I need an organ, I will not be given.
I want to add to what Dr. Mule,
Yeah.
because I think it's really nice, Dr. Mule, that you brought up this thing, because I think it's very topical in India at the moment. With Rahul Gandhi's
Varun Gandhi.
Varun Gandhi.
sorry, I'm so sorry. With Varun Gandhi's proposal, I think it's really important. So I just wanted to say that even in countries which have the opt-out system, there's something which is known as there's something which is known as a hard system and a soft system.
Correct.
In the hard system, you're presumed to be a donor unless you officially opt out. Whereas in the soft system, they still allow the families to have a say in the matter. And I think this is really important, because when you have a hard system, to my mind, that's a big ethical concern, because you may end up getting people who really didn't want to donate, donating, and it's like as if the consent has been taken over by the state, and actually consent has to be an active process. So I think there is a real concern in that case, and also in many developing countries, you don't have that level of understanding, you don't have that level of literacy. So will you be taking advantage?
Informed. Is it informed consent really? So
informed consent. That's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
The second point I want to bring out is, many people use this example of Spain, because Spain has the highest deceased donation rates in the world. And, they have the opt-out system. But, Spain actually had the opt-out system in 1979. And for 10 years, it made no difference at all. No difference at all. Until what they did was they had a whole system in place for the donation process. They focused on ICUs, they focused on training, they had transplant coordinators, intensivists. So that was really has been the bedrock of their thriving disease donation process. It's not because of the opting out system.
Correct.
And
correct.
I think that is very important in the sense that I was going to say that at the time of the brain death, and how you declare that time, the neurologists, intensivists, and authorized doctors are allowed to go to the donor, talk to the family. It's a conflict of interest. If I'm a heart transplant member, and suppose kidney transplant team or liver transplant team, we are not allowed to go and meet the donor or their family until they give a consent.
Right. Right.
Similarly here in Spain, they have a ritual team and coordinating team, and they go and convince and talk to the patient and maintain the donor until the consent is obtained. And after that, they are out. They are not involved in any transplant.
Yeah. Correct. So I think those are very useful points. And I think it is important to understand that it's not just about opt out versus opt in. It's about actually, making sure that the system is working and people have faith and trust in the system. So I think, which requires communication. Um, Kalpesh, coming to you, right? Were there, I know you talked of your immediate family was in favor of it. Did you kind of hear comments, questions, concerns from the wider family? And, was that an issue? Especially because, again, as kids, you may not, or as young people, you may not have heard it, but your mother may have, had people saying, why did you do this? Was it really necessary? And so on. So if you would like to shed a little bit of light on that, and you're on mute.
Yeah. Uh, no, very frankly, there was nothing as such within
Okay.
the family. No one had such concerns. And I think maybe many of our relatives and friends came to know later on.
Hmm.
Say after a couple of days, it was out in Times of India that a cadaver donor has donated, and the recipient was someone from Virar, and I even found, I think, two of them. I really don't remember, and I just left it there and then itself. But I think there was someone from Virar who was a recipient, and one more from Bombay itself. I mean, maybe all from Bombay, but
Hmm.
someone from Virar was mentioned in the newspaper. I knew specifically that that was from my father for sure. But that was then, and no, no one was as such. My mother was very fine because we are in very close contact, me and
Hmm.
my brother and my sister. So she was absolutely fine. The
Right.
only shock was already. I mean, the shock which was supposed to be handled was already over. I mean, this was not at all an issue at any point.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so we were fine, absolutely fine. Yeah, and
Good.
rather we were happy post that. We frank with you.
Hmm.
I mean, as soon as we got that, the first thing, I should not say this, but after 3 days, the first thing when I saw this, I just took a pic of that and circulated in my or in many of the groups, my
Hmm.
business group, relatives, friends, that this is what has been done, and we are really happy with what we have done. And rather, everyone was happy as well. I mean,
Correct.
everyone really acknowledged the fact that you have done something good. Maybe as Jaya said, many of them were not aware as well what has been done actually. But
Right.
and because of my brother's thing, I mean, we are very much secured with that. He usually controls all this, and we are fine with that.
Right.
Thank
Right.
you. Yeah.
Good. Thanks. Thanks. Um, Couple of questions that have come in as well, and these keep coming back as recurring questions. So one has come in from the Q&A. If I want to change my decision from non-organ donor to organ donor, what should one do?
Just express it.
And talk to your family.
Go for it and talk to your family. That's wonderful. Please go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry. Just add on to, can you tell them to contact Mohan Foundation straight away so that you guys can help them out? Simple as that, right?
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
So we have this, again, I'll repeat, we have this toll-free helpline number available in 8 languages. Our counselors do this job of guiding people. So if they have, a lot of people want to know the process first, how it goes. Is there any misuse? Are the organs put to good use? Is the donor respectfully taken care of? So all of these doubts are sort of, put to rest by our counselors. They give confidence and thereafter enable the thought process. Because if people are holding themselves back, they have some doubts in mind, some gaps in mind. And I think essentially that's our work to bridge this gap and enable them to take the decision for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Jaya. And how long does it take for the body to be returned back to the family? Uh, Anybody, Jaya or Dr. Mule? Yeah.
Usually it takes around 5 to 6 hours.
Okay.
Because it takes liver takes a long time for dissection, and once that is done, it is very fast and very quick. And after we give in a very decent, clean condition all the sutures and everything, and dressed and well dressed and all, we give. So we don't see any incision marks or anything on the body.
Right.
So
Right.
Just to add to what
I
Dr.
want to
Mulay is
add, yes.
saying,
Sorry.
sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Jaya.
Okay. So from the family's point of view, from the time that they give the consent, so remember there are two sets of apnea with a minimum gap of 6 hours which are to be done. So the family is kept informed about all this, and like Dr. Mulay said, the retrievals per se. So the heart is retrieved first, thereafter the liver, lastly the kidneys, and then the tissues such as the cornea or skin or even bones for that matter. So all of this, and post this, there could be, if it is a road traffic accident or a medical legal case, basically, then the police are involved. There are the forensics, so there will be a post-mortem. So I would say we generally tell the families, give them an indication of about, say, from the time that they give the consent, about a day is what it takes for us to hand over, because otherwise, you know, the family gets very restless. And so we keep the families informed, we keep them updated at all points of time. And so that, and this is essentially what the transplant coordinator does. He or she stands by the family, updating them and standing by, giving them whatever support that is required. And if there are going to be any delays due to whatever reasons, again, the family is kept informed about that. And ultimately, families' wishes are respected. So if they want an early handover, then the entire system works around that, because what the family is doing is has to be given utmost importance. They're doing something which is very noble and cannot hurt the family at any cost.
Right.
So I just wanted to add, actually, Jaya has said most of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to add that, you know, it can take quite long. It can even go as long as 48 hours between from the time that, you know, you inform the family that, you know, the patient is brain dead and where actually retrieval takes place. Jaya has mentioned most of the reasons why there are these delays. I just wanted to add two more. One was the whole process of allocation. You know, allocation is not an easy job, because you have first of all, you know, the allocation takes place in the hospital, where if it's a transplant hospital, that hospital gets the first preference. After that, it moves to the city, then it moves to the state, then it moves interstate, you know. So all of this is happening on, we do all this on WhatsApp, by the way. We have WhatsApp groups, and all this allocation is happening. Then you have to look at matches. Then you have to contact the, you know, you have to keep in touch with retrieval team. What's happening there? You have to contact the transplant surgeon. Do you think this is a good match? Are you willing to take the organs? Then the recipient has to be contacted. Are you willing at this point in time to be a recipient? Sometimes they may be top of the waiting list, but they may be not ready for whatever reason to actually go. It could be even be a financial reason, you know, and they're not willing to do the transplant just then. Transport becomes another issue. You know, you're transporting within the city is fine, but what happens when you're going outside the city? Sometimes we have to organize, you know, charter flights, or you know, look at suitable flights that you know, are there, commercial flights which are there. So all of these factors come into play. So, you know, it does take time. If it's a medical legal,
Can I just interrupt there, just to understand that time is taken for the organ to reach the recipient, right? But are you keeping the organ in the body of the donor all this
yes,
while?
yes.
Okay.
So all of this, before the retrieval actually takes place, a lot of these things are already happening, you know. So this background work is happening. You've got to have laboratory tests being done, you know. So all of this takes time. If it's a medical legal case, because you asked when will the body be handed back. If it's
Right.
a medical legal case, a post-mortem has to be done. Now,
Right.
sometimes, most often, that post-mortem cannot be done in the same hospital where the retrieval is happening. Then, you know, the body will have to be transported to another hospital. So, you know, this is why transplant coordinator, as Jaya mentioned, is very key to this whole process, because that transplant coordinator is the one who is kind of constantly communicating with the family, and, you know, telling them what's happening. And then ultimately, of course, the family is the one who, if, you know, they will set the time. And sometimes you do get cases where the family says, sorry, you know, I need the body by such and such a time. I'm not willing to wait any further. And then we could lose an opportunity. That can happen sometimes, particularly if somebody is coming from outside the city. Yes, I can see, Doctor.
I just mentioned from the time we start the retrieval of the organs, how much time it takes. But
Right.
yes, there are certain lot of logistics behind this. So my
Right.
point to everybody is that, my question to everybody is that, suppose it becomes an out system, or this legality of my donor card becomes positive in our country, or if I'm carrying my donor card, I told my near ones and dear ones, then it is my last wish to donate the organs. Will the family inputs of nobody wants to delay the retrieval. Nobody wants to delay the giving the body back to the, because we do not want to delay. As a transplant surgeon, I do not want to delay the retrieval of the organ, because the organ gets damaged slowly if I leave it like that. They must understand that. Nobody is making delays purposely in giving the body. So will that donation card help in negating the family's? Yes, we respect the family's opinion, because it's at the end of the day, the consent of the family, that is what is important today. But will it help in organ donation card if I carry to?
Okay. Yeah, I think these are still tricky questions. Question coming from the audience: if one is suffering from cancer and or is diabetic, can he donate organs? He is 69. If at all, what is the procedure?
So I honestly feel, as a doctor or a transplant surgeon, that to donate is the job of the society or a family or a patient. Whether that organ is good or not, let that transplant team or retrieval team understand it, analyze it, see if it is good for the recipient or not. If it is not good, nobody is going to take the organ. If I take the organ from the body, if Dr. Lobo or ZTCC or the ROTO has allocated me the organ, and if I go and retrieve the organ and not use it and put it in dustbin, it is illegal. I will not use it. So if on certain tests what we do, the liver or the kidney or the heart is not good condition, we will not use it. That is the job of the transplant recipient team. Don't think while donating that, no, I am 59, I am diabetic, I am not going to donate. Because of that, I am not going to. Don't say that.
And just to add to what Dr. Mulay is saying, so many people think that अरे मुझे तो बीमारी है, diabetes है, BP है, तो क्या काम के हो सकते हैं मेरे organs? It doesn't work that way. So like he said, as long as the organs are healthy, they can be used. Diabetes doesn't preclude the person from donating organs. If suppose a chronic diabetic has become brain dead, and the doctors sort of assess, they will check whether the organs are in healthy condition, because what is not useful for that person is not going to be useful for anybody else as well. So
Right.
they will check, and if they find that the kidneys are damaged, are of no use, they will not be retrieved. Maybe the liver is in good condition, the heart is in good condition, they may be retrieved, and thus still such a person can save so many lives.
Right.
Yes, active cancer is a definite no-no, because it could spread to the recipient as well.
Unless
and
it's brain cancer
complicate.
itself.
Yes.
Sorry, when you say unless it's brain cancer, so if you have brain cancer, you can still donate.
Which is not spread to the body. You only
Okay.
located brain cancer.
Okay, it's not metastasis. It's not
It is
metastatic.
just localized, then it doesn't
Okay.
preclude, yeah.
One concern that often comes up, and I guess it's kind of linked to the, the cost of transplant as well, is, are donated organs given only to the rich?
No.
Dr. Lobo or Dr. Mulay, whoever.
So, I mean, Lobo will answer it. But what happens is that, suppose a patient of a transplant who requires a heart transplant or a kidney or liver transplant comes to us, we analyze it, we see that the transplant is good for that patient, whether his body will accept that new heart and that heart will accept that new body, These two studies are done.
Right.
Once the risk ratio is less and benefits are more, then we register this patient with ZTCC or ROTO or NOTO or SOTO, whatever. So according to the blood group and according to the number of my registration, I will get a call. So if there is a donor somewhere in the part of Mumbai or somewhere in India or somewhere, that recipient doesn't call me directly. The donor doesn't call me directly. That hospital or doctor doesn't call me directly. They call it to the government. The government has got a list, and according to the list, the organ is allocated.
Right.
Yes, so Dr. Bule has said that the most important aspect, which is the waiting lists, which are maintained using very specific criteria, you know, age, blood group, clinical status, how long the patient has been waiting. And as far as Roto-Soto is concerned, you know, we have four, like I mentioned earlier, ZTCCs in Maharashtra. And each of them had their own guidelines. So right now, what Roto-Soto has done is, with the help of its expert committees, it has drafted guidelines which will now be uniform across Maharashtra.
Right.
So the other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, just to give you some facts, okay, so last year in 2019, there was only one deceased donation from a government hospital, okay. On the other hand, 20 patients in government hospitals in Maharashtra benefited. And where did all these donations happen? They happened in private hospitals, you know. So this is a myth that, you know, it's the poor who are being taken advantage of to serve the rich. We go strictly according to the waiting list. We don't look at whether your hospital has been donating or not donating. If your patient is on that waiting list and the number of that patient has come up, the patient gets it. So I think this is important. But having said that, I must also say that getting a transplant done in a private hospital is very expensive.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, we cannot run away from this fact. And there are also, I know there are a lot of efforts in various, so of course the government is trying to, fund certain efforts to make it easier for poor patients to have transplants. But also I know that there are corporate hospitals, there are private hospitals which are looking at CSR, they are looking at
crowdfunding.
And so, you know, there are efforts being made by private hospitals to make this possible. Yes,
Right.
maybe would like to say more about this.
I think, okay, go ahead, Dr. Mulya. I think Kalpesh also wanted to say something.
And I want to add something.
Same thing on the other note is that how many donations the government hospital has generated, how many donations the municipal corporation hospital has generated. And
that's what you just said. Yes.
Yeah, that's what she said. She started with that, Dr. Mulya.
And I mentioned, no, because we have to make something compulsory at that level. Now, to maintain that donor also is costly, ma'am. It is not easy. It is costly.
So, Dr. Mulya, may I just say something for that? So, the government of India, okay, this is the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare under the National Organ Transplant Program, has a program in place that if a private hospital maintains a donor and the organ goes to a patient in a public hospital, okay, a BPL patient, then the government is willing to pay up to 1 lakh to the donor hospital. So, you know, they are willing to do that.
They are willing to do that. That's not happening.
Time out. That doesn't take away. Kalpesh, I'll let you go.
No, sorry, I just had a query actually on this. Do you have a nationalized list of recipients? Like if someone is in, say, Maharashtra, then is it that the recipient would be in Maharashtra itself, or it can be in Gujarat also, or how does those logistics works? Just to understand.
Every state has its own list.
Right.
There are 3, 4, 5 ZTCCs: Mumbai, Pune, Aurangabad, Nasik, and Nagpur, Dhule, like that. Okay, so if there is a donor from Mumbai, it will go to the ZTCC Mumbai. If there is no recipient of Mumbai, it will go to outside Mumbai. If there is nobody in Maharashtra, it will go to Roto, regional office, like Dr. Lobo's office. So she looks after Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Goa, 4 states. So that recipient from anywhere there, then it will go. If it is nobody there, then it goes to the nation.
Okay, so that means, as just initially it was discussed, the handover time keeps on increasing in that
Yes.
case, right?
Yes.
So
Simple as that.
I'll tell you what we do, Kalpesh. You know, the moment it comes on the group, the moment it comes on the, shall I say, state group, all right, we already start informing people in the region, okay, that there is a possibility. So people start getting their act together. So, you know, we want to save time. So all the background work starts happening, okay. Sometimes what may happen is that already a transplant coordinator from one of the ZTCCs, even while they're doing it within the city or the zone, may call me or, you know, my transplant coordinator and say, look, this is happening right now. There's a possibility that we may not have a donor, I mean, a recipient in our zone, you know. So already the process then starts. So this sort of thing happens because everybody is very, what shall I say, sensitive to the whole time issue. And right now we don't have, so in Maharashtra, we have a common waiting list. Okay. So we have we don't yet have a national waiting list. We are working towards that. But the rule is also that cannot register in more than one hospital in a particular state. And it's only if your state does not have a transplant hospital, then you can register in another state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one question, given the current COVID scenario.
Aparna, if I may add to the
Sure.
previous point, whether the organs go to someone who is rich or poor. So, one of the examples is of Vilas Rao Deshmukh ji. You know, I've heard it from the ZTCC officials that there was a lot of pressure on the ZTCC machinery to sort of take care of that, but they decided ultimately that it would hurt the entire program if somebody is given out of turn weightage. And so that's the point that I'm trying to make, that there is absolute transparency in this. There is no preference given to any particular any push or pull from any outside body. And also why the government is trying to bring in augment the organ donation process in the government hospitals is to bring in an equity in that, because when a cadaveric donation takes place in a government hospital, so we are working with Sassoon Hospital, GMCH Nagpur. So when donations take place over there, like last year, there were a couple of donations. So their own patient, a BPL patient, gets one of the kidneys, right? So that's how you have helped bring in an equity into the system. Right. And therefore, the need to push organ donation in the government hospitals.
Right. I'm just conscious that we are over our time limit, but just one final question on the COVID impact, right? So how has COVID impacted? Because there are lower road accidents. So that is definitely happening. I don't know if, I think what people don't know is if somebody dies, are organs can they still be donated? How do you figure out whether it's a COVID death or not? Is that important, etc.? So who would like to shed light on this at the moment? Dr. Lobo?
All right, I can shed light on a little bit of the figures that we've been seeing since COVID hit. So of course, I will speak mainly from Maharashtra because that's the data that I have easily available. So Maharashtra, in the month of April, there was not a single donation from a deceased donor. Okay, so this is to give you an idea. Whereas the 3 months preceding, from January to March, there were 168 transplants performed, out of which 86 were patients who benefited from deceased donors and 82 from organs from living donors. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea. Last year we had, like I mentioned earlier, 160 deceased donors. Okay, and this year we've already crossed the halfway mark. We're now into August, and till the end of July, there were only 45 deceased donors. So you can see the numbers have, fallen drastically. The reason is also, I'm sure Dr. Muley would like to say more about this. It's because people are concerned. Okay, so there was this whole concern initially as to how will transplant recipients be affected. Now, of course, people are getting more information on this. There was a concern about if somebody comes to the hospital, will they get COVID? Is the risk more for COVID rather than for transplant? Now, all of these, in fact, at the beginning of June, the state health authorities, Maharashtra state, the appropriate authority, has brought out guidelines, okay, for how to handle transplants during the COVID pandemic. And I think that has helped the whole medical fraternity. And because you're able to look at things in perspective, both in terms of what are the precautions that need to be taken to prevent, COVID infections, but also the whole aspect of, we tend to forget that people needing transplants, okay, these are life-saving surgery. So in the case of kidney, yes, you can have dialysis as an option. But what happens in the case of liver, lung, heart? Okay, these are patients who have no options. So when you're looking at a transplant, it's a life-saving intervention. So one has to look at it, and weigh the risk and the benefits in terms of the possibilities of contracting COVID. So this is just what I'd like to say. I'm sure Dr. Mule will have more to add to that.
I think there are many things to add, but I will not go into the details. We can discuss on.
Just one question to you, Jaya, on this. Sorry, I'll come to you, Dr. Mule. But are you receiving calls to your helpline for donate? Are donors reaching out in the last 3 or 4 months still?
Well, you'll be surprised to know there are so many people who are reaching out for the wrong reason. They want to sell their kidneys because the situation is so bad. So people don't know whether it's right thing that they're doing. People are getting desperate. So we're getting a lot of calls from people just wanting to inquire about how they can sell their kidneys, and then we have to counsel them. And the queries, it's very sad, but they end up asking, would you rather I commit suicide? Then we have to counsel them. It goes into a whole new, another area, but this is how it is. Having said that, past 10-15 days, we're seeing a lot of flurry of activities thanks to the Organ Donation Week. I get the feeling people are sort of adjusting to this new normal, and they're moving on, and now they're focusing back on the normal things. Like otherwise, we thought this year it's going to be fairly drab. There won't be any awareness activities, but no, all our offices are extremely busy. Balancing the time. So I'm happy to say that people are wanting to know more. I hope this picks up.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Mule, you were saying something.
Just a touch on COVID is that the COVID does not spray through the blood.
Right.
It has not shown much evidence of COVID spreading through the blood. So if I had a COVID, in fact, my blood is taken for plasma to generate use that antibodies to treat somebody who is in the COVID.
Right.
That is one thing. So if somebody already had a COVID in the past, so why this fear of COVID patient is that because the fear that the whole team will get and everybody will be affected. But now the norms and things are coming to is reality quite a lot, and slowly I hope we come out of this COVID thing and start thinking back again of donating the organs. Just
right.
One other point I wanted for Dr. Robo is that, Madam, I don't mind government giving a rupee or a penny to the donor hospitals if they're, but make it compulsory for each doctor, one who comes out of the government hospital, that when he gets a degree, he has convinced 5 people or 2 people or even one patient for donating the organ.
Okay. Thank you. On that note, I think we will wrap up. Kalpesh, if you would want to kind of, give a message to, as somebody who has donated, that would
I
be...
just take a minute of your time. I
Sure.
have a small message to give for sure. It's just that like our elders always had said that we must have done some good karma in our past life, which is why we are born as human beings in this life. So continuing with that philosophy, I think there is nothing as noble as donating organs after your death, since you are saving lives and families. It is necessary to understand that your body is still of use to someone even though your heart is not beating. So if you look at the statistics of people dying because of scarcity of organs, as already mentioned by Dr. Lobo, it's surprising. If one person can save a number of lives, then imagine a population of 130 crores would do how much. We should get inspired and encourage others whom we know to do everything they can help to save human lives. I hope by now, of course, just a very small example. There are many people who have donated organs. I hope I have encouraged a few out here. And to conclude, I would just like to say, recycle yourself, be an organ donor. Thank you.
And
Wow, very good.
as the title goes, you need not be a doctor to save somebody's life.
Correct.
Absolutely,
Correct.
absolutely, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, Dr. Lobo.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
thanks,
much.
Kalp.
Thanks, Jaya.
Thank you, Parna. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for a really scintillating discussion, and also for sharing so much inputs for our audience. It's a very fruitful Independence Day afternoon, I think, well spent. So hopefully we will be free from lack of organs soon. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you to our audience as well. Sorry, okay, just.